Hello, everyone, and welcome to AHA, A Human Amongst Humans. My name is John J.W. Oxenford. I'm here at CCTV, and I am totally happy to be here on this episode today. I got something that I'd like to share with you. It's actually, I got it from some homework that I did with Bunker Hill recently in a yoga elective. And it talks about what I believe to be the soon-to-be realized fourth dimension. So I'm going to talk about what I believe is the fourth dimension and how we can access it. And then after that, I will be reading some excerpts from the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. I picked up that book a long time ago when I was really looking for guidance in my life. And I was looking for spirituality, and I think I went over in the bookstore over here in Central, 5 Stars, something like that, and I picked it up, this illustrated version, and it was just very interesting. So I'll be reading that today. Hopefully, I've got some other books that I've actually cited in this fourth dimension idea that I will bring in later on too. So without further ado, let's begin. So first off, I'm just going to do an introduction of myself and then talk about some excerpts from these writings that I think prove what I'm talking about. I'm going to say, what I feel like we can do to be aware of that connection, that awareness of another dimension, and then I'm just going to read off the sources that I'll probably bring in some more episodes. So here we go. In this video, I will give my etic perspective of knowledge I got from Asian-based philosophies that gave me the journey to develop my own reality and my own spirituality. So I grew up in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Here we are. As an only child of my single parent, my mom. And we weren't that well off in money, but we did live in a healthy environment. And I always respect and appreciate, my mother for finding that place for us. Because I developed well, even though we weren't that big on cash. My family origin was from England, and we only knew my biological father was Irish. We didn't know anything else about him, which is a fascinating thing because I met him this year for the first time. I'm 37, and I haven't known him since I was born until 2 years ago. I also realized that my friend, who's also been on this show, I don't know if you've seen him, Alex, is we are related. And my best oldest friend, we realized we're cousins, and our families are related. So from his father, we realized that his father's brother was my father. And but back then when I was growing up, it was just me and my mom and my family in England, my grandmother, grandpa, and aunt in England. And it was a healthy, supportive family despite low economy. And I grew up with a healthy foundation. I would go to England to see them growing up, and we were connected on a healthy level. However, in high school, I began using substances and developed a habit of drug use that would later end me dropping out of college and becoming diagnosed with schizophrenia. I do believe that this was mainly developed from substance abuse. It may have had some roots in my just how I was in the regular, but I feel like in that stage of development, the amount of substances that I used messed with my development a little bit. So I got schizophrenia, and I'm doing well. I'm doing very well. I'm good on recovery, and things are going well with that. It's an interesting symptom to have in my perspective. But in recovery, I looked for meditations and Asian spirituality related texts and philosophies to help me reach a higher state of being, a better level of consciousness, basically level of consciousness outside of depression, a level of consciousness into enjoying my life. To explain that, I have chosen to speak on texts from Tao Te Ching, The Art of Peace, Survivors on the Yoga Mat, and Tony Robbins' Awaken the Giant Within. They all relate to the Asian philosophy of manifestation. and how it is, and I believe it has now come to the United States. I believe it may play an important role in the healing of our country and redirecting it from its current, to my perspective, chaotic, financially obsessed racial mentality to racist mentality into a power of peace and health for all of us and the world. I search for insights from Asian philosophies in order to create an ideal reality and find a way that I can simply improve and enjoy my life. It has been through focusing on social media platforms and turning off from the news that I have developed the philosophy that relates to a possibility of every individual on this earth with the power for their own reality. An example of this is I decided to stop looking at the regular news feed, breaking news. I've not looked at it because I noticed whenever I did look at it, I would get stressed because it seemed like there was a lot of bad news. And I thought maybe I have to step back on this just to maintain my stability and my mental and emotional health. And so I created an Instagram account, and I followed only the pages that made me feel like people were doing good. The Walk for Peace, Barack Obama, Woo, and I focused on likes. What am I liking? Am I liking everything I see? Am I liking individual things? What is this? What am I giving this world? What am I telling the world that I want in my newsfeed on my Instagram page, at least? And so I gave likes maybe some sort of weight. Do I like what I hear? Or is something very bad happening? And one confusing thing that I'm still working on is, what if a person I really support is talking about something negative that has happened in this world? And that's still something I'm trying to figure out. Should I give that a like for the person supporting the stability of the world against the negative, or should I leave that alone, not supporting the negative? And that's still something I'm figuring out. But it has been through sources and texts such as Survivors on the Yoga Mat that I'm currently reading in class that I have perceived this theory to be possible. In that book, I read a story of a woman stricken with a physical disease who went on a journey to heal herself through yoga meditation. And it was written in the book that she noticed significant reductions in her physical blemishes after delving deep into yoga meditation. So this, I think, is a great sign that negative things, even supremely negative things, can be resolved. If we get a correct mentality, we're all in a healthy mentality, the unhealthiness will disappear. And that's my argument and hope in this dimension. If it is possible to, through spirituality, heal one's seemingly helpless reality, then what are the implications if we were to use all of our resources to change the negative elements in our own lives and the world around us together? Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins speaks a lot about going through defining yourself diligently with the power. Will the world around you reflect what you've done inside? On page 413, he says, what exactly is identity? It is simply the benefits that we use to define our own individuality, what makes us unique. Our sense of certainty about who we are creates the boundaries and limits within which we live. So that thought about the inside is reflected from the outside, the external world. In Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu in verse 10 says, can you balance your life force, and embrace the one? Tao talks a lot about controlling your inner energy and finding balance and taking charge of your focus in the world. He talks a lot about inner balance and universal power, a power of the universe. In The Art of Peace by Morihei Ueshiba, verse 1 says, the art of peace begins with you, working on yourself and your appointed task in the art of peace. Everyone has a spirit that can be refined, a body that can be trained in some manner. a suitable path to follow. You are here for no other purpose than to realize your inner divinity and manifest your inner enlightenment. Foster peace in your life and then apply the art to all you encounter. And The Art of Peace is definitely a book I want to bring on this show as well. I think it's exactly where I got these ideas from. I think it says it better than me, and I'd love to just bring those verses to the show. So the question is it possible that each one of us could have some way in the facts that our own realities are? And thus, I think we have found the possibility of a fourth dimension. What if the news was reflecting our own internal state? What if everything we heard, everything we saw, everything we read was some sort of reflection of what we were focusing on in our mind? What if what we paid attention to and focused on gave a response to the greater power that governs our world? And I'm not talking about politicians. I'm talking about a god or a goddess or a deity, whatever power you believe in. What if what you pay attention to is telling this deity what you want? This thought started for me when I made the decision to turn off the news. I made the decision to only pay attention to what was really healthy for me. And I thought, what if this greater power is listening? And what if it's paying attention to what I'm telling it I want in my life? I grew this theory also from the concept of manifestation, with the thought that maybe there is some greater force in the universe that shapes our reality based on what we pay attention to. Of course, whatever we give attention to shows that what we want for our lives to be. So if we do not focus on what we don't want, the news that is negative and gives us pain, we would be telling this greater universal power what we feel should really be in our worlds, at least our own personal worlds. The idea of being aware to all stimuli around me in every day. Am I getting messages of how what I'm paying attention to is reflecting in my life? Am I making the effort for the world around me to accept my better half? Am I focusing on my better half more than giving myself, negative affirmations? Or am I only complaining? Am I only focusing on the negative? What if I focused more on the positive? Am I seeing this world better? Is this world becoming better? Either way. I had a theory the other day on the train. Recently, I've been looking around in my apartment and thinking it was all messy and everything. But on the train, I heard someone talking about climate change. And I thought, what if focusing on what I can do in my own world, even the simplest act of cleaning up my apartment, could reduce the pollution in the climate around me? And to explain that, I say, surely if one human, and then another after that, were to maintain their focus on keeping their personal space clean, the world would create a clean mentality. And if all individuals were thinking of a clean mentality simply in the act of cleaning their own living space, the world will have a clean space mentality itself. And thus, there would be more effort in keeping the world clean. That's another way to explain it. Everyone's thinking about positive vibes are there. So in conclusion, I relate to the possibility of a fourth dimension, a state of reality where we can control our own personal world. And each person will be able to guide the elements of their own time and space. Every person would be on their own planet almost. Thus explaining why the universe is so big. Maybe these planets in this space relates to something else. Maybe there's a reflection there of us in the universe around us. We could build stronger foundations in our health and our lives by complementing the news and the things on in our world that we see and experience and manifest our own realities. And I wanted to say something else here. A state of reality where we control our personal world and each individual will guide the elements of their own time and space. Yeah, so here's my idea of of a fourth dimension, but I've actually heard that the next two dimensions to discover are time and space. I think I spoke on it once in another episode. It may not be up on YouTube, but this concept of being able to affect the past in the future and being able to affect the future from the present, I think is a theory of a dimension. I haven't really thought about it more than that, but it's time, being able to control time, and then space, distance. I'm actually going to put up a track in my next demo relating to time and space. But what if, distance weren't a problem? What if we could open a door into another country? Is it possible to be able to find a dimension where distance does not limit us, where time does not define us, So that's what I've been thinking about recently. We've got about a little less than 15 minutes, so I'm going to delve into the Tao Te Ching. And if you haven't read it, I'd suggest it because, what do I have here? World Cup. This is a very easy read, you see. These just simple verses about what Lao Tzu thought was important in finding peace and stability in the world around us. And I read this book years ago, and I have notes here, so I'll try to read my handwriting and explain what I was thinking to you. But on verse 1, oh yes, and the translator, there are many. The translators here are Stefan Addis, I hope I pronounced that correctly, and Stanley Lombardo. Okay. Just thought I should say that because there's a lot of different interpretations. But Tao called Tao is not Tao. So there's a lot of this in the Tao Te Ching. There's a lot of this not being able to define the great, but also the great, everyone understanding the great Tao. Not being able to give it a simple name, and tell it to go down to the grocery store and, pick up the groceries, and not being able to divine the Tao, but also understanding it innately. Just we are all aware of what the Tao is in our own unconscious mind. So I have a note here. Is the Tao mortal or immortal? And I think in reading this a few times, I'd say the Tao is definitely considered to be an immortal, universal power. And also a state of being that we can we can become, we can create for ourselves. Names can name no lasting name. Nameless, the origin of heaven and earth. So Tao, the origin of heaven and earth. Naming, the mother of 10,000 things. And I think in saying 10,000, it means to relate to, a million or infinite. But I think the use of 10, the number 10, is an interesting thing here. And actually, I think after reading this, I began to connect to the number 10 specifically, and just seeing how it was written. There's the 1, so I say that's maybe an individual, or an individual, a human. And then there's the O, which I saw as a circle, so I related that to a planet, maybe the womb, maybe Mother Earth. And then I thought the individual of the earth must be the God. And so I started relating to the number 10 as God. So naming the mother of 10,000 things would mean that the Mother Earth was the mother of God. I kind of just realized that while I was saying it right now, but I like that one. So Mother Earth is the mother of all of us. Empty of desire, perceive mystery. Filled with desire, perceive manifestations. So sometimes it's confusing in reading this because it says sort of sometimes contradictory things, such as desire is good, have no desire. And I see that as kind of a balance thing. But in this verse, it seems that desire is a good thing. And maybe desire is a word from the translator that maybe meant something different to another translator and maybe means something different to someone who actually speaks the language. So I'll continue. These have the same source, but different names. Call them both deep, deep and again deep, like the universe, like the womb. The gateway to all mystery. And I wrote down here, manifestations unlock mystery. And I could relate this to my life and the fact that I'm looking at something I have to do and I'm feeling bad about it. And I think, I don't want to do this. I'm never going to be able to get this done. I shouldn't be having to do this kind of thing at all. You know, there's a problem with the world around me. And then I think, well, what if there's a way that I can find a way to enjoy this? You know, what if I can change my mentality from this is so annoying I don't want to do it to what about this activity can I enjoy, and won't I enjoy it once it's done? So that is an accomplishment in my life. That is an evolution in my life, you know, minor or major, depending on what I just accomplished. So that's how I get over annoying tasks. Verse 2. Recognize beauty and ugliness is born. Recognize good and evil is born. So I think this is about finding a balance, finding stability. You know, if you run too much into good, bad will come back on the same level. You know, if your life is really, really terrible now, it'll be that good in the future. So I'm not sure if I agree with it, but I don't disagree. So it is finding the balance. Is and isn't produce each other. Yin and yang, I wrote here. Hard depends on easy. Long is tested by short. High is determined by low. The term, the last shall be first and the first shall be last. Sound is harmonized by voice. I don't see how that relates to the verse, but maybe it's just an interpretation thing. After is followed by before. So the past is followed by the future. Therefore, the sage is devoted to non-action, and thus is inaction. So being not in action is actually a state of action. So that kind of balance, that kind of dual existence, and maybe that's a great action not to be acted upon. You know, maybe that's an action to not be swift, moved by the currents of life that make us feel uncomfortable about our own lives. So inaction is actually, taking inaction is actually an action in itself. Moves without teaching. So let me read that again. Therefore, the sage is devoted to non-action, moves without teaching. So maybe the true master, when the true master teaches, they do not teach, they be. And so the students will understand that this is the state of being to become. Create 10,000, there's that number again, create 10,000 things without instruction. So the teacher not doing, just showing. Lives but does not own. Lives but does not own. You know, I don't need a mansion, I just need to enjoy my life. You know, I wouldn't mind a mansion, but that's besides the point. You know, I just need to find a good feeling of being alive, and that is enough for me to enjoy my life, whatever may come in the future. Lives but does not own. Acts but does not presume. That's an interesting one there to me, because you know, sometimes when we start a conversation with someone, we try to presume how they're going to react. or we think we know how they're going to feel if we type this sentence in an email. So we edit it and edit it and edit it and think it's all perfect when the original sentence that we sent may have been enough, or maybe it doesn't matter what we sent. We just made a point across in 1,000 different ways, and we wouldn't have had this stress if we hadn't worried about it in the first place. That actually reminds me of my demo 3, proclamations of damnation, or the sanctity of tomorrow. You can find that on SoundCloud under Metal Meditations. The links in YouTube as well. And I had this cool name that I obsessed over of one track, and it said, I named it Black Incantations of the Rain. I really felt that title at the time. And then I overthought it and renamed it, and I called it Autonomous Seasons. It was based around a rainy day, and I made some riffs that I really loved. But I wonder, would that name, Black Incantations of the Rain, would that name have got more listens? Would have people liked it more? So now I see we are a minute before closing, and I think I'm going to bring this book back. I really like where we've gone with this today. I hope you were interested in my idea of the fourth dimension and maybe the fifth and sixth, considering time and distance. Those numbers can probably be, I don't know which is the actual fourth, but I think we're in a place now where we might have I don't want to say power, because that sounds kind of aggressive to me, but we have the ability to change our own mentality. We have the ability to change the world around us. Maybe that's some reflection of the health that we're creating within ourselves. That's the spark notes for the entire episode here. If you watch until the end, let your friends know they only need to see the last 10 seconds. Okay, farewell everybody. Thank you for watching, and I hope you do well.